Hi, I'm Grant Stephen, one of the two investment guys. Chris is away this week, but I have with me a very special guest in Dr. Warren Jestin, Senior Vice President and Chief Economist at Scotiabank. And he's going to share with us today some of his thoughts around all things economics. Warren, I wanted to start with generally what your forecasting is for 2013.
I think it's going to be a year of moderate growth. Inflation's going nowhere fast. Interest rates are probably going to stay where they are. We may see some volatility in the bond market, but we're still in better shape in many ways than the U.S., and we're in a whole lot better position than in Europe.
Right. Now, very recently, the Bank of Canada came out and announced that they weren't changing interest rates, and that was no surprise to anyone. I found it interesting that there was a little bit of a change in their verbiage around what their expectations were. They seemed to be bringing it down. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to that.
Sure, there was a little bit of market anxiety in the fall because it was unclear when the Bank of Canada was going to start raising interest rates. And over the fall and through the winter, early part of winter, there was an expectation among some people, not us, that they might begin to do so at the end of this year. We believed that they would be at least the beginning part of next year before that would happen. And the Bank of Canada has now confirmed that the growth is slower, inflation's going nowhere fast, and as a result, they're probably on the sidelines for the balance of this year and into next year as well.
Right, okay. I wonder if you could just talk briefly about what a couple of the most important indicators are to you that give you the best gauge of the activity in the economy.
Well, the thing that generates confidence more than anything else is employment. And Canada's at record levels of employment right now. I think you're going to see in the months ahead that employment growth slows down. And in fact, U.S. growth in employment may well speed up. But overall, I think the employment side of the economy is going to be stable to improving. And that is fundamental for consumer spending, for the housing market, and a whole lot of other things.
Right. How important is the overall condition of the housing market relative to the economy? Because there's been quite a bit of discussion around Canada's so-called housing bubble. I think it's relative to certain pockets of strong markets, generally speaking. But I was wondering sort of, how important that role is in economics, and overall in our GDP.
Well, I think you're going to see that housing adds less to overall growth in the country, but housing is a very local thing. Right. So in many markets across the country, you're going to still see the markets remaining healthy and maybe even improving. The two worry markets have been the Vancouver market and the Toronto market. We've seen over the last year Vancouver already going through a bit of a correction. My suspicion is Toronto is going to begin that by the fall of this year. But in both cases, with employment strong, with income gains pretty good, with the interest rates very, very low, that you're going to find that the correction is going to be relatively modest. And on a go-forward basis, we're probably going to go through a period of bottom finding that'll extend into next year, but with no major downdraft. Certainly nothing like we saw in the U.S.
Well, that's certainly good news, Warren. Lastly, just really quick, some opportunities that you see?
Oh, I think there's the world of opportunities out there. We're beginning to look into external markets, and that's a long-term proposition, but the most important good news right now is the U.S. consumer is getting back in the game. They're building more houses, and that's good for the wood exports that we have in this, the lumber exports and the like out of Canada. They're getting more into buying cars, and of course that's good for Ontario. In general, as the consumer gets back in the game in the U.S., we're going to find that segment of our exports improving.
Great. Thanks very much for your insights today. Really appreciate that. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact Chris and I at twoinvestmentguys.com. Chris will be back next time, so join us then. We'll continue our discussion around some of the market dynamics that we see. So until then, I'm Grant Stephen, signing off for the Two Investment Guys.